Okay, so today is February the 28th, 2022, and Frank Gehry is 93 years old today. Let's wish him happy birthday, a remarkable age and a remarkable professional activity. I don't know exactly why I chose to begin this presentation with this picture, which I discovered accidentally, but maybe, there might be some meaning here. Some people like to do this, and maybe in the field of architecture, he is not very dissimilar. So Frank Gehry was born Ephraim Owen Goldberg in Toronto, Canada. His father, Irving, had a heart attack and seeking an easier winter, moved to the family to Los Angeles in 1947. They became US citizens and Ephraim adopted the first name Frank in his 20s. Personally, I agree. I would have liked him to keep this, in my opinion, very nice name, Ephraim. Goldberg drove a delivery truck while taking courses at Los Angeles City College. He took architecture and became enthralled with the possibility of the art, although at first he found himself challenged. Sympathetic teachers and an early encounter with modernist architect Rafael Soriano confirmed his choice. He married Anita Schneider in 1952, and they honeymooned at John Lautner's Desert Hot Springs Motel, a good building by John Lautner. He won an architecture scholarship to the University of Southern California and graduated in 1954. Later that year, he changed his last name from Goldberg to Gehry under pressure from his wife. Gehry worked full-time for the Los Angeles firm of Victor Gruen Associates, where he had apprenticed as a student in 1952 and later served in the Air Force. Gehry entered the Harvard Graduate School of Design for City Planning. He returned to Los Angeles without completing the degree and briefly joined the firm of Pereira and Luckman before returning to Victor Gruen. Gehry got restless. He took Anita and their two children to Paris, where he spent a year working in the office of the French architect André Remonde and studying the work of Le Corbusier. Gehry returned to Los Angeles from Paris in 1962 and established with Greg Walsh what became known as Gehry Partners. In the late 1970s, Gehry found a creative outlet in rebuilding his own home, converting what he called a dumb little house with charm into a showplace for a radically new style. His Santa Monica neighbors were not happy at all, but Gehry's unusual house attracted serious critical attention, and he began to employ more imaginative elements in his commercial work. His international reputation was confirmed with the 1989 Pritzker Prize, the world's most prestigious architecture award. Philip Johnson helped Gehry become the most visible of an elite group of highly publicized star architects. Gehry's most spectacular designs were the 1997 Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain, and in the 2004 Walt Disney Concert Hall in downtown Los Angeles. He made a 2005 animated guest appearance on The Simpsons, an important thing in the United States, it seems. In 2006, Gehry was the subject of a documentary, Sketches of Frank Gehry. At a press conference in Spain, October 2014, Gehry declared, "Let me tell you one thing. In the world we live in, 98% of what gets built and designed today is pure shit. There is no sense of design, no respect for humanity or anything. They are bad buildings and that's it." Bio adapted from achievement.org and Wikipedia. Okay, here is the man. We know him. We saw him with a model for the tower in Harlem that he built. Here he is again. Happy birthday to you, sir. And yeah, the former truck driver became indeed a star architect. Is he happy? We don't know, but I think he has reasons to be happy, happier than most of us, considering his long life and his remarkable, output. I read this. Here he is with bottle of Hennessy that he designed. Some drawings by, I will go rather quickly because we have more than 500 pictures in this presentation. So let's look at some drawings. We know his sketches. What is amazing, you know, many people or some people probably could sketch kind of like this, but in his case, the sketches do become buildings, thanks to formidable collaborators and the formidable technology he has at his disposal. Why does he have it at his disposal? Because he wanted to. It didn't fall from the sky in his office. He created it there, and bravo to him and to them for this. Okay, we begin with early works. 1957, a cabin. Let's call it a cabin. You wouldn't expect this from Frank Gehry, but that's how he started. Perhaps the most, intriguing thing here is the flag. The building, it is as it is, and maybe the orange color of the entrance door. So again, it's a long way from this to even to that Hennessy bottle that we looked at. But it's probably a comfortable, nice house, little house with a little chair he designed on the left. But there are interesting things here. I mean, you know, when I look at this picture, it's something very Japanese, no? And while we wouldn't identify it with Gehry aesthetics, I think it shows talent and even finesse. Another house, another residence, 1959. He also built a lot of, maybe not a lot, but yes, some rather commercial and banal buildings. This is not banal, and this is not commercial either, I would say. It's a good building, but we'll see others. Here, the entrance is rather this, entrance is, evoking, what later was called postmodernism. Now, an apartment building from 1962, it was developed by Gehry, family, and friends. He started under difficult conditions and he tried to push forward. Bel Air residence, 1963. So at the beginning, he built all kinds of buildings in order to, build up his professional, to grow. Another apartment building from 1964. Again, you wouldn't expect something like this from Frank Gehry, but I thought it was important to show his beginnings. Another residence. This one I like, it's the kind of building which would be immediately published today, not 50 years ago. on Arch Daily, and not only Arch Daily. But he worked together, you see, with Greg Walsh and Fred Usher, and it's possible that, you know, these architects also had a word to say. But it's a good building, and those trees are probably agreeing with me. Another apartment building, 1967. Park West Apartments, 1970. A large, you know, the Harper House condos. Nothing exceptional here really, except that, yes, there is plenty of space in this apartment. Now, 1976 residence at the beach renovation, Malibu. But here we see already a small sign of dissent or rebellion. And this is going to get amplified more and more, as you know, and as we move forward in time. Yes, this is announcing the future Frank Gehry. Now, his own residence, which about which I read what I just read, which indeed was a breakthrough. He lived in this house, and he modified it then in a way which provoked, you know, the neighborhood, but also brought him a lot of attention, because he had the courage to challenge the orthodox geometry of the building. And like anything new, at first, was not easily accepted. But at least for those living around this house. And we can imagine, indeed, that this house was alarmingly different from the neighboring houses. I mean, you know, you have here a glimpse at how the building looked before he added this, you know, disturbing, you know, intervention. It is a long distance between this and this. It's probably a very pleasant kitchen. And not everything, I mean, I don't know if it is like this today. Maybe at that time it was like this. Maybe the photograph is from that time, but you see an old, you know, stove, and there are touches of humane, you know, aesthetics in a way. You know, not everything is perfect or even clean, or it's a lived-in space. It's fine, but architecturally is still engaging. Another addition, 1978. Here we are dealing with a bigger house with a swimming pool. Mr. Frank Gehry didn't have a swimming pool, I think, in his own residence. But I like more what I saw in his house than what I see here. Another residence, 1978 model. I don't know if it was built. No, but here we can see him more pushing forward towards a more non-conventional approach to architecture. And I like what I see in the model. Bruce Denziger, an engineer who worked for him and who joined us some days ago here, said that, so he worked with Frank Gehry. He said that in his office, people do lots of models. That when they had discussions, you know, young architects at one point would leave the table of the discussion, the conference room, and then they would return not much later with some models based on the discussion that took place. So the model is very important in the making of architecture in the office of Frank Gehry. And this I experienced myself when I visited, I visited, if I can say so, I saw the retrospective at the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and I was able to sit inside a model. The models that they were exposed then were huge, some of them at least, and in one of them I was able to sit on a chair inside the model. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. There is a noise. Thank you. Now, another residence from 1978, another model. Fresh modernism here, and I like what I see, and I regret it was not built. But he built many other buildings, as we know. Again, 1978. So, 44 years ago, Santa Monica unbuilt. This one I like too. And I regret too that it was not built. Another house, 1978. Obviously, this is his building, not this one, and not this one. Loyola Law School from 1978 to 2002, various buildings indeed. And here we see that even a law school could be joyous in its architectural expression, colorful, and so on. Bravo to him. Why should law frighten people, and why should a school of law be morose or gray or intimidating? Why can't it be joyous and playful? I think it can, and maybe it should. In 1981, the Charles Arnoldi, anyway, triplex. Is this building here? Well, maybe he built, no, it's this one here. I don't know if he built this one too. He might have been, but actually the building that was described is this one. For some artists, I understood. Interesting ceiling, roofing. An aquarium, 1981. California Aerospace Museum, California Museum of Science and Industry, 1984. You see, he was making attempts towards a narrative architecture, and that's why this little airplane is, brought in to tell the story of the function of the building, and it does. Maybe in a facile way, but it does. (1984). Now this is a retail building, but if I pass by, I think I would feel tempted to get in, to explore the building, if nothing else, because it is, provocative and rather interesting. Norton House, 1984. I like this house. Yes, it's playful. Is it Zen? Because I know now it's kind of fashionable to talk about Zen residences. Maybe this cubicle here, could receive a Zen monk with also a certain appetite for a certain joie de vivre. But it has also something Japanese about it, and I like this building. I am referring, of course, to this building. The Turtle Creek development, Dallas, unbuilt. Sorry about this picture, but it shows the utopian, adventures of Mr. Frank Gehry. It was not built. Regional Library, 1985. A library, yes. Why not? Another house, 1988. Commissions began to be larger, more opulent. This could have been a museum. Well, it's a house. You see the plan. One thing to me seems, difficult not to notice the joy of doing architecture. I think he had genuine joy. He experimented, he tried all kinds of things, and maybe some people would say he was too playful. Well, in opposition with or two lives that are not playful enough, maybe a change might not be necessarily bad. Another house, 1987. So, this was built about 30 some years ago, not too long ago, actually. Another residence, 1989. I think here we can see the architect, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe sitting near the owner or one of the owners. Now, Yale Psychiatric Institute at Yale University, 1989. Herman Miller factory, 1987, 1989. Does it look like a factory? No, but that's good. That's a quality that it doesn't, it's a factory which doesn't look like a factory. Vitra Design Museum in Germany, 1989. A building that was very often published. Frank Gehry in Germany. He built other buildings in Germany. This is the beginning of his activity in Germany. I don't think Mr. Frank Gehry works with the computer himself, but he values very much the digital technology, and without it, his most important buildings would not have been possible. In fact, most of them. But then I think Zaha Hadid didn't work herself either with the digital technologies, but she appreciated them and invested in them, interest first, and then financially as well. And she hired the proper people to expand her visions as far as possible. Rockwell Engineering Center, 1990. Now, maybe some would say that, this canopy is too emphatic, but I don't know. I mean, it does tell you to stop, and it does tell you to come in. It does create that drama at the entrance of the building that is maybe appropriate for a public building that wants to be a vortex of energies. Venice, California, 1991. Now this building is perhaps a little bit too literal and figurative for my taste. I'm not sure about the architectonic quality of these binoculars. But again, this is an architect who was not afraid to, leave behind, certain precepts of architecture. Did he do well in this case? I don't know. But his oeuvre is so large that, we could maybe accept even such an extravagant pop attitude, maybe. Anyway, it's unforgivable and unforgettable at the same time. It is what it is. Should the building become, say goodbye to the abstractness that it characterizes it, or, should it become object-like in this very descriptive way? I'm tempted to say that no, but Iowa Advanced Technology Laboratories, 1992. Disney Village, Paris. This one I visited, and I was always surprised why a sophisticated old culture, like the French culture, why did it need Disney Village close to Paris? But maybe my question is not the best question. I don't know. He was not the only one. There were other important architects of the time who were invited and who built here. This is what Frank Gehry did, not too far away from Paris, the Disney World in Europe. The Olympic fish in Barcelona from 1992, as I said, he was born on the 28th of February, and thus the zodiacal sign is the fish. And no wonder Frank Gehry is obsessed by the fish. He designed even lamps fish-like, and here the fish is for all to see. In Barcelona. Personally, I have some reticence vis-a-vis literal, figurative, descriptive works brought into architecture in this way. But he tried a certain level of abstraction here, but it's not, in my opinion, high enough. Anyway, it is a fish. Brâncuș, who was also born under the same zodiacal sign, he also was very interested, to say the least, in the fish, and he sculpted the fish, but in a more abstract way than this particular building by Frank Gehry. Another house from 1992, the Frederick Weissman Museum of Art, University of Minnesota, 1993. Center for the Visual Arts in Toledo, Ohio, 1993. Citadel-like, fortress-like. Cinémathèque Française in Paris, 1994. Vitra International Headquarters, Basel, Switzerland, 1994. Frankfurt, 1994. Germany again. Here is a rather different work, but also the function, perhaps it's, you know, an ice skating rink. And I think it's good. Team Disney, Anaheim, California, 1996. Now the dancing house in Prague. I don't know. I saw it. To me, it's not so much dancing here going on, but this is how it is described. Personally, I see some anxiety in this building, and I saw it. I was there. I think it's called a little bit inappropriately the dancing building, but that's my opinion. So this one is in Prague. What is interesting, the ancestors of Frank Gehry came from, you know, regions of Poland and Russia, and there were other, you know, architects of fame. There are, you know, like Daniel Lipskind, also originating from there, or Elizabeth Diller. So there is something in that region. Anyway, Prague. Now here we see something that is, almost an architectural paraphrase of what is happening on top of the secessionist building in Vienna by Maria Olbrich. I wonder why he put that thing there. Maybe to express him, you know, some kind of secessionist attitude that he himself felt entitled to express. It's possible. An unbuilt work here, but we see the importance of the model or more model making. The Guggenheim Museum. Now we finally arrived at the work which made him very famous, and also made the city of Bilbao famous for housing it, for hosting it. I visited it. I was there. I saw it. I went inside. Yes, it is a building that Wolf Prix placed on the list with the 5 most important buildings that one a student of architecture should not fail to see. The other 4 being the pyramids, the Hera temple in Paestum, but later he, when I talked with him, he said he didn't say that, but that's what I read in the interview. The 3rd one being plane, actually, the Boeing, I don't know what number, 748 or whatever, or 747. And the 5th one So this building was on that list with 5 buildings. And the fifth one, his own, I mean, building a church he built in his own hometown in Austria. Anyway, so this is the famous Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, which brought a lot of attention to Bilbao, and also, riches, because the economy of the city went upwards after this building was built. So you see, a building of reference could have a positive economic impact on a city and even on a country. Well, the fish is present here too, from the architect born under the zodiacal sign of the fish. Now, of course, Frank Gehry is not the only architect in the world who was born in the, in this zodiac, under this zodiacal sign, but he had the idea to become obsessed by the fish and express it in his buildings, in some of his buildings. The initial sketch, which became the building. If he didn't have the high technology he works with, he could not have completed this building. It's easy maybe to make this kind of sketch, but to make it, to transform it into a building, it's not so easy, no. I see the fish everywhere, moving, being free. Germany, 1999. He built quite a number of buildings in Germany. It might be a surprise to some, because we usually associate the German spirit with rigor, with seriousness, with not so much playfulness, not so much capriciousness, but it seems Frank Gehry was very welcomed in Germany. In Germany, I only saw one building, and I will show it here a little bit later on. A bank, a good building, actually, in my opinion. The University of Cincinnati, the Academic Health Center of the University of Cincinnati. Times Square, New York City. This is an interior design job. But the fish is here present too, in its, maybe less obvious way, but it's present. The glass parts here. And I think it works. This is the bank I mentioned that I visited, the DZ Bank, and it's right across the street from the Holocaust memorial by Peter Eisenman. So towards the street, the building is not alarmingly provocative, but it has a courtyard. The core of the building is where the spectacle takes place because of, again, some kind of a fish here. And it's an interesting building. Who would expect something like this, in a bank? Well, he did it. Is the fish suffocating somehow here? Surrounded by bankers and the money and the activities of the bank. Maybe it could be read in this way too. I don't know. This is maybe a malicious interpretation from me. Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle, 2000s. A more visceral work, although traces of viscerality were already present in some of his works, but this one may be in more obvious and colorful ways. The tower in Hanover, I mean, it's the Hanover Tower, Gehry Tower in Hanover, Germany, 2001. Not as wild as we would expect from someone like Frank Gehry, but still twisted. A flagship store for a well-known designer, fashion designer, 2001. Cleveland, Ohio, 2002. Bard College, upstate New York, 2003. Scotland, Dundee, a smaller work, as you can see, and somehow more static. Well, Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, 2003, again, large scale work by him. He also did stage design for this building for some performances. The truth is, Frank Gehry had a very rewarding career and continues to have it at 93. You know, it must be very rewarding to have so many commissions all over the world and to also design for other kinds of activities, you know, obliquely related to architecture. So I guess if there is a message is, you know, follow your instincts, take risks, express yourself with courage, and it might happen. Let's only hope the war next door will end soon, and the pandemic will end soon. And then, but then we live in different at a different time now. I just read today about very alarming reports about the climate change, which is serious, and drastic measures must be taken. So maybe we should abstain for a while from building. It's serious. I mean, did we have a winter in Bucharest? No, we didn't. There was a little bit of the appearance of a simulacra of a snow today, but we didn't have a winter, really. We didn't. And last year we didn't either. So obviously the change is real. The climate is warming up, despite the fact that Arch Daily is, you know, just the other day published an article about ice skating and architecture. Let's be serious. What ice skating when the icebergs are melting? Now, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, 2004. You wouldn't think it's an institute of technology, but it is, and for a very prestigious university, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, 2004. It's true, after a while, one can get tired of his architecture because it is a continuous, you know, assault in a way on us with similar forms. And, you know, he is in some kind of a crusade, I guess. You know, I have a different kind of crusade, or I try with my presentations. But here, you know, is Frank Gehry building in this frenzied way. You know, I have a feeling that despite the appearance of his buildings, he might have a pessimistic side, to say the least. The J. Pritzker Pavilion at Millennium Park in Chicago, 2004. This is before the pandemic, of course. a bridge also in the vicinity of this. I mean, it's connected, the one with the other. They are connected. This is the bridge. He can do anything. I mean, any kind of fluidity is no problem at all for the office of Frank Gehry, because they have the technology to envision anything and to build anything. So, you know, something like this done with the T-square and the rectangle would have been almost impossible, if not impossible. Snakes, zigzagging, Martha Herford, Germany, 2005. It's interesting that the Californian playfulness that is present in the work of Frank Gehry has also some kind of reference to a citadel-like architecture, almost medieval. You know, this is some kind of a fairy tale, you know, fortress. You know, it's kind of an interesting architecture. It's not really oppressive. I mean, it has a pop side, it has a joyous side or fairy tale side, but it's also, you know, you see here, you have opaque walls, not many windows. And so there is some kind of a, you know, burlesque medievalism at work, I would say. Pop medievalism could ever be something like this? Well, his architecture seems to point in this direction. I could understand why Kenneth Frampton is against this architecture. And not just him, actually. When I attended lectures at Columbia University in New York in the 90s, you know, there was some disdain vis-a-vis Frank Gehry, but I'm not sure it was really totally justified or even partially justified, because the truth of the matter is his activity is, you know, has a high level of exuberance. And, you know, he continues to build. And, you know, there is something to learn here, probably. Let's see what's going on here. 2005. This presentation that I made actually last year is much too long. It has 500, more than 500 pictures. That's why I go rather quickly. I should have, I think, more than 500 pictures is just too much. This building in Spain, though, is one of the most Dionysian that he built, and appropriately so, since it is about you know, it's about the wineries and wine and grapes and getting drunk, getting intoxicated. And the building is evocative of that, I think. It also has colors, but you see, its visceralities are indeed connected with what intoxication might mean. We remember the words of Charles Baudelaire, let's get drunk. Well, this building seems to say, you get drunk. I don't need to get drunk. I am already drunk. I'm talking about the building. So I think it's one of his better works. Unfortunately, this one in Chelsea is not. I passed by it. I was in a car, and I like more the building by Jean Nouvel on the left. This one on the left is by Jean Nouvel. This one is by Frank Gehry, and is similar to that building in California, actually. So this one is by Jean Nouvel, and in my opinion, is a superior building to the one built by Frank Gehry. City of Wine Complex is the same. We already looked at it, but it's it's the building that I mentioned in relation to Dionysus, the god of intoxication. And look at the poor houses here and what he built behind them. You know, it's really getting drunk. It's about getting drunk. Yes. I remember once I tried to make an exhibition with works under the title Architectural Intoxications, and an architect from Italy sent me a work for an architectural disintoxication. And I understand in a way why. And perhaps we need these days more disintoxication than intoxication, maybe. But you can arrive at paradoxical results even through disintoxication. You could arrive at some kind of an intoxication in reverse, in the sense that even minimalism could be a maximalism, because if you intensely exaggerate it, I mean, minimalism could become excessive too, and thus a maximalism. So, you know, the opposites attract and they become each other. That's why when you place your hand in snow, the first feeling you have is that it is hot. When it is not hot, it's cold. So there. Maritza show stage at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. He did, you'll see a picture of this artist. I hope I have here a picture of him with, of her with, yes, here they are. On the left, of course, the architect, on the right, the artist. He loves artists, he loves art, and he collaborates with them often. And, you know, he is himself some kind of an artist, closet artist, I think. This is Marisa. So this building is for her, the show stage he did, Marisa, at the Walt Disney Concert Hall that he built. Art Gallery at Ontario in Toronto, 2008. Maybe strangely, he didn't build too much in Canada, where he was born. And even what he built like here is not as exuberant as he can be. But, you know, the influence of Bernini is to be acknowledged. He did say that Bernini, he found inspiration in Bernini. Well, Bernini was not the only Baroque architect. There were others. But again, you know, here we had a deconstructivist claiming, you know, a connection with very constructive, actually, Baroque artists like Bernini. And his partner in show, I'm talking about another architect in the deconstructivist exhibition in New York, Peter Eisenman. Right now at almost 90, he's 88 or 89, is studying assiduously Alberti. Bravo to them. So Frank Gehry, inspired by Bernini. I cannot say that Eisenman was inspired by Alberti, although I attended myself 5 conferences by Eisenman on Andrea Palladio. But the very fact that these people at such an advanced age, you know, they study, you know, they read, and they read even, you know, about architectonic activities that belong to a very different time and in opposition to their very own work. This shows a great appetite for culture, for creativity, for ideas, for knowing. Princeton, 2008. I mean, he built so much, my God. 2008 again, Serpentine Gallery, the pavilion, actually, the Serpentine Pavilion. Now, are these things sustainable? Are they doing a service to the climate? I don't think so. It's true. So, you know, how are we going to build these days? Maybe, again, we should abstain for a while from building. because building doesn't matter how so-called green it is, it's still polluting, it's still consuming resources, it's still contributing to the madness of production, 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 consumption, consumption, consumption. I know this is not good news for architects, but if we are to choose between architecture and you know, the rising levels of the seas, or the melting of the icebergs, or the, you know, the global warming and so on, which would it be? Which would be a first priority, architecture or the climate? I think the climate, and it hurts me to say it, but you know, first thing should be the first one, and the first one is the larger issue of the climate. It's very, very important. You know, we build the buildings, but what do we do if today I read on Arch Daily that modernism, you know, the houses of important buildings, important houses imitated ocean liners. And I made a note for myself that, you know, very soon we will live on ocean liners, not in buildings mimicking ocean liners, because if the levels of the sea is rising, well, these are serious matters, but I'm not sure that architects are doing enough, because we cannot abstain from building and building and building. You know, it's like you know, and I understand in a way. Of course, it's like telling a painter don't paint, telling an architect don't build. It's difficult to swallow something like this, but what do we do? So this building by Frank Gehry, of course, is not sustainable. Of course, it contributed to the problems, but at that time when he built it in 2008, there wasn't so much concern as it is now about this. Novartis Pharma, Switzerland, 2009. What can we say? Again, Frank Gehry anticipating somehow a little bit, but many of his buildings did actually. The Louis Vuitton Foundation, which I visited, and I hope I have it on this presentation. The Danish Cancer Society, 2009, he built so much. This is kind of interesting, because also what he did is in a dialectical relationship with the existing building. So there is some tension between the two. Brain health. Now, this is a building I mentioned from 2010, and Bruce Danziger, an architect who collaborated with Frank Gehry, told us a few days ago that being inside this building is like being inside you know, a human brain. It's a building for brain health, but you know, you might very well say, what health? This is actually sickness. It's the inside is very, you know, tormented and tormenting. So, you know, you wonder, is it about brain health or brain sickness? But, you know, those who have a concern for brain health, they do so because they are confronted with a certain condition. But it is it is a building. I mean, you wonder if you go inside this building, you are going to get well, or you are going to get even worse. I mean, it is whitish, but you get the idea of what's going on there. You know, it's yeah, I don't know. I mean, somehow in the case of a brain illness, perhaps you'd want a more peaceful, you know, ordered building, not one that agitates you even more. Fortunately, here he just used the white. Imagine if this was like the outside here, you know, you would get crazy even more than you probably are when you get inside the building. God forbid. Anyway, O'Keeffe Museum of Art, whatever, Mississippi, 2010. And I'm not showing all his buildings, although it might appear that I do so. I am beginning to regret. In fact, I began to regret a while ago that I have too many images in this presentation. Forgive me. That's why I go rather quickly. We probably only have other 200 or so. I'm joking, but maybe not. I think, yes, we will still have to go through about 200 more pictures. The New World Center, Miami Beach, 2011. Now, how refreshing it is to see this kind of facade from Frank Gehry, isn't it? I mean, looking for too long at pictures with his works, you might begin to like again the international style. I mean, really, this, seems to be more radical than all the movement, fluidities and so on, in contrast with them, of course. So it's like in the case of, let's say, someone who escapes from a prison and still has the costume of an imprisoned person. And while he was continuously anonymous, in real life, he becomes alarmingly individualized. Here, the same thing is the regularity of this facade, which under so-called normal conditions would guarantee its anonymity. Here, in the hands of Frank Gehry, it becomes highly individualized and surprising and unique. So it depends always on the context. Not just the physical one, but also the metaphysical one. And this I keep saying all the time. There isn't just a physical context. There is also a metaphysical context. Call it psychological, cultural, spiritual. So it's not just the physical context. New York by Gehry at 8th Street, whatever. It's the tallest building he designed. He proposed one for Berlin too, but that one was not built. This was built. In my opinion, is rather disappointing. I mean, yes, there are these fluidities on the facades, but essentially it's still a prism just like this or just like this, except that he played with the skin. I'm not so convinced about these towers, but I understand the difficulties. How do you build a valid building in terms of real estate and still create the disturbances that he loves to create? But it was built. This is the sketch, and this is the building, tall as it is, and it is tall. The skyscrapers of Daniel Lipskind are also problematic, in my opinion. Daniel Lipskind did some good buildings or interesting buildings, but I didn't yet see a skyscraper by Daniel Lipskind that is truly convincing. Hong Kong, Opus Hong Kong, 2011, not so tall like the building we just saw in New York, although it appears tall because it's on top of a hill. So this is from 11 years ago in Hong Kong. These are, expensive buildings. These are buildings that were not done with limited resources, were not done with a concern for the depleting resources of the earth, not at all. I would still like to see a sustainable building by Frank Gehry. he probably would hate the idea. The very idea would make him uncomfortable. A duplex residence, but I might be wrong, because he built this for New Orleans in 2012, which is a residence for, after the flooding took place in Louisiana. And it's a residence, with a destination not for the very rich or for an elite. So I guess it's possible to build even from his premises in more modest ways. Still Frank Gehry, but you see more subdued. Reminding a little bit of at least one house from the very beginning, if not several. Of course, it's not spectacular, and it's not supposed to be spectacular because it's a house built with a limited budget. Maggie's Hong Kong again, 2013. When he uses sloping roof, I think he becomes a little bit unsure of himself, and I understand the dilemma. How could you use a sloping roof, a so-called traditional roof, with the kind of architecture he practiced and practices? But this work I like. I like because it's the most colorful, and appropriately so, because it's a bio-museum celebrating, the richness of nature in Panama. 2014, I remember I saw the model and the plans at the Venice Biennial, and it was built afterwards. And look at this. Who said that modernity should only use whiteness? No, I think color is beautiful, and color is life. And personally, I think we should use more color with courage, just as he did here. Look at the buildings behind and look at what he did. This building that he built for the Biomuseum is actually embracing, celebrating, applauding, and kissing the richness of nature. Is about love for the abundance of nature, which is colorful. The peacock's tail that impressed John Ruskin. He probably would have impressed, and he did impress, Frank Gehry as well. So again, let's compare the gray, mammoth, tall, whatever, they are tall. But this building, without being tall, is saying yes to life, mainly through color. Well, not only through color, also through the sculpturalness of the building. Is it sustainable? Of course it is not. But, it's hard. Architecture, by definition, is not sustainable. It doesn't matter how modest a building is, it's still not sustainable truly. So the one who said to be sustainable is actually to not build, to abstain from building, I think was correct. But, it's a contradiction, a conflict. If you want to build, you consume resources, you create some pollution, some dust. It's inevitable. This is the plan, and this is the building, the plan, the building. Why did he complicate himself? Well, you could ask the same question, God himself. Why did he complicate himself to create such a complicated world and such complex world? Well, Frank Gehry is not God, of course, but I think this is a good work. And I like very much the way he handles color. So this is in Panama City. But in most of his buildings, despite the fact that he can be so-called Dionysian, chromatically and otherwise, there is very often another side, like here, you know, a cubistic, a cubical structure. Next to the, even this part of the building is less wild than what we see here. So, you know, between this and this, there doesn't seem to be a relationship. They are not really connected. Now we arrive at this work, which I visited with students in architecture from Romania. And I didn't go there with great expectations. From pictures, I didn't like it so much. But when I arrived there, and particularly at the top of the building, I changed my mind. Yes, it's not a sustainable building. Yes, it's not a modest building, but it did impress me, again, particularly at the top. And I will show what is happening in the coiffure of the building. Unfortunately, all the pictures I took myself were not good. There was something wrong with my camera, and I took many pictures. Unfortunately, none came well, you know, came out well. They were without focus. I don't know what happened to my camera. Anyway, but you can find still, and I found a lot of pictures on the web. It is amazing what he did there at the top of the building. Yes, it is a very expensive building, and you know, one could ask what for. But then we can ask this question in relation with many architectures of the world. Just look at the sheer scale of what's happening here. I mean, you see the human silhouettes. You see this, I mean, you know, just this junction, this joint between these structural elements, which are also slightly curved, and they are huge. I mean, just this in itself is an event, but there are countless such events just at the top of the building, and the scale is incredible. And you know, again, the geometry just to handle the meeting of all these space, of all these pieces to come together, it's mind-blowing. I mean, it is, you know, it's again, you can ask, and it's a legitimate question, what for? But you know, we can ask this question in so many respects in life and in art. You see here too, and I didn't take this picture, everybody is taking pictures. Why is everybody using the camera? Because the building makes you photograph and photograph and photograph again. I repeat, I came here prepared not to like it, but I changed my mind when especially at the top of the building. I mean, look at the complexities here, and it's just one so-called detail. It's incredible, really it is. And I really regret I don't have more pictures. I should have had more. I should have had more pictures for this building, and I apologize, I don't, but you can find plenty on the web. Louis Vuitton. I also had the luck. In fact, at that trip at the Louis Vuitton Fondation in Paris, I had two discoveries. One was this building, and the second one was an American painter whom I didn't like before, that is Basquiat, but there I liked Basquiat a lot. So I changed my mind about Basquiat, and I also changed my mind about this building by Frank Gehry. It's different, you know, you look at the works in magazines or books, and then you see them, you know, in reality, so to speak, is different. Now, I don't know what it is. Again, I regret I should have had more pictures with the Louis Vuitton building in Paris. Sydney. This is not so you know, impressive after we saw the previous one. Model, I don't know what's going on here. It almost looks like a building that was bombed by the Russians in Ukraine. But not here, of course. I'm talking about this. Sydney, Australia, Facebook West Campus, because he worked for Mr. Zuckerberg. I don't know if the building was completed. This is, from 2015. You see the architect and you see the founder of Facebook looking at the model. 2015, right? This was 17 years ago. So Frank Gehry at that time was 70. So let me count now. I will look again. 2015, that is 7 years. No, 7 years ago. So Frank Gehry in this picture was 85 years old. 85 or 86 actually. Yes, because he's 93 years old. So at 86, in t-shirt, smiling, working. Bravo to him, really. Does he look like an 86 years old man? I'm not sure. I don't think he does. I mean, yes, he has white hair, but is he older than Mark Zuckerberg? I don't think so. Anyway, this is the plan. I don't know if I think the construction started, but I didn't see pictures of the building being finalized. Pierre Boulez Concert Hall in Berlin, Germany, 2017. We are approaching the end of the presentation, this long presentation, I'm sorry, and it wasn't very profound because it was too long. At first sight, this doesn't seem to be so complex or so, but look, it started with this sketch and it was implemented in this way. The curves are not so simplistic as they might appear at the first sight. To make something like this is not easy at all. I mean, it's not even easy to draw it, and he built it. I mean, not himself, but the project was built as it was based on this sketch. Now, his own residence, we saw the first one that signaled, here I am, Frank Gehry, in the world of architecture. But here is a new building he built for himself in 2017 in Santa Monica, California. I somehow like more the first building than this one. Yes, this one is bigger, but I don't really see an evolution actually from that building to this building. It doesn't surprise me actually. Except perhaps that he tried to connect with that beginning, so to speak, by using also sloping roof, with these junctions, but still sloping roof. But it looks a little bit funny, so to speak. This kind of deconstructivist traditionalism, if I am to call it so, maybe not very appropriately. Anyway, so this is his house built 5 years ago. Another residence from 2018, so four years ago. The roof makes the show. The roof has something of Rudolf Steiner, doesn't it? And we paid homage to Rudolf Steiner the other day. Here is the owner on the left, and here is the architect on the right. 88 or 89 at the time. Still kicking, still working, still creating. Bravo to him. Well, the cynic or the sarcastic would say, what do you mean bravo to him? He's polluting the air, he's consuming the resources, he's destroying, he contributes to the rising levels of the sea. But so do we. I mean, you know, those of us who build or anyway. Now we arrive at this building, which was criticized by some, but in my opinion, it has some qualities. The simple fact that it was inspired by the painting of Vincent van Gogh, who lived and worked in Arles and produced some very important paintings there, shows that Frank Gehry respected the metaphysical context sometimes. And the building is even physically respecting, well, I don't know if in a successful way, but attempting to connect with the physical context of Arles, because this base, the drum that is circular at the bottom of the building, is in reference to the Roman atrium or amphitheater that is not too far away from it in Arles. But the building itself is, you know, in a way, I don't know if it's an architectonic meditation on the paintings of Vincent van Gogh. Maybe they are. It's a building that tries to, you know, evoke, you know, not just the turmoil, the inner turmoil of Vincent van Gogh, but the inner turmoil of anyone, including, of course, ourselves. I like the building maybe even more during construction, like we see in these pictures. Can you imagine the many difficulties, you know, encountered in drawing this project and then building it? Again, you know, the cynic would say, what for? But the same cynic would have asked Vincent van Gogh, what for? Why did you paint 2 masterpieces a day? Why? When you could have watched TV, that is, if there was TV at the time when Vincent van Gogh lived, and of course there wasn't. But you understand, here we see again the duality, that on one hand is this tormented and tormenting building, and then a part which is rather straight, and you know, the two sides coexist in a good number of buildings by Frank Gehry. I'm not sure about this space, you know, if it was not covered in glass, I think it would have been better. But I hope I have a view of the city of Arles, and then you'll see the Roman amphitheater to which this part of the building makes a reference to. Also, I think noticeable and perhaps important to our discussion is this fragmentation. I would call it a pointillist building, referring to the pointillist paintings of, let's say, Seurat, because you have this fragmentation, you know, it becomes almost impressionistic somehow. And this is another aspect of relating to Frank Gehry being influenced by the painting of Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh was not a pointillist, but he was not an impressionist. But you know, strokes of the brush, of the painter's brush, can be approximated architectonically in the way we look at here. Now let's see, where is the so here is the building by Frank Gehry, and I'm looking now for the Roman amphitheater, and either I'm getting blind or my glasses are, this I know, my glasses are not, I don't see the amphitheater, but I know it is. It is somewhere here, but I don't see it. Anyway, maybe the picture is, although I think I showed it exactly because that amphitheater was supposed to be shown. Just to see the relationship between the roundness of the base of the tower and the existing Roman amphitheater. It must be somewhere around here, but I don't see it. Maybe we need a picture from further away. It's possible. Yeah, I should have had here more pictures, but they can be found on the web. As I said, you know, this is just an invitation to study the work of any architect I present, and then you can do your own work or homework or play work, call it whatever you want, in your own terms. 2019, 3 years ago. This is a building which is a little bit surprising because it's more quiet, more peaceful. Could it be that, you know, Frank Gehry being 90 at the time when this building was built? But you almost feel like saying the tree was built by Frank Gehry. No, the tree was not built by Frank Gehry, it was built by God. But here Frank Gehry became again Frank Gehry. So this tree connects to this part of Frank Gehry's building, but less with this part, which is also by Frank Gehry. 2019, 3 years ago. Now, this is an important work. The Dwight D. Eisenhower Memorial in Washington was finalized in 2020. I don't even know if it was finalized. It's a very recent work. Here we see the project, the rendering. People still taking pictures of the rendered building. It's a memorial in Washington, and it was built. It was built. In fact, to look at the picture right here of, well, this was not done by Frank Gehry. This was, you know, done by a sculptor. But this is the building. I read there are interesting information. You can find interesting information about how the glass is here incised. You know, it's there are complexities here that need to be deciphered on the web if you are interested. Now, the John Baltesari house, 2017. I don't know why I show this now at the end. I should have stopped maybe a little bit earlier. But 2008, I don't know, another house. Maybe I began with houses and I end with houses. I don't know. I made this presentation last year. So this is from 2018, 4 years ago. Now, a project for tall condo towers in Toronto from 2021. So this is last year, the Mirvish Gehry project. Initially 3, then 2 tall condominium towers in Toronto, Canada. Here they are. I don't know. I mean, for skyscrapers, in my opinion, Frank Gehry is not as, you know, spectacular, so to speak. You know, they are skyscrapers. They could, in fact, if you saw this image, you would not have known that it was, you know, the building was proposed by Frank Gehry. It could have been proposed by any other architect. And now we look at a picture from his office with many models for the tower in Arles. He obviously loves Vincent van Gogh, and he took this occasion seriously to, you know, do lots of alternative models for the tower. Now, I end the presentation with some furniture designs by him. He designed many things. He loves to design. He loves to design chairs, and I think he's good, you know. And his designs are original, and they have the same spirit as some of his buildings do. So we can tell that he was in love with the Baroque Roman architecture, with Bernini, and probably not only with Bernini, maybe also with Art Nouveau. And there is also some pop element and burlesque element. Yes, there is. He lives in the 21st century. But it's something disappoints me is that despite his populist agenda, you know, his furnitures, I'm sure, are very expensive. They are design pieces, signature pieces. I wish he created more for those, you know, more disadvantaged. Because I think he has the mental disposition and probably the soul disposition as well for being compassionate and being you know, working for those less privileged instead of you know, someone like Louis Vuitton who makes thousands of euros for a little bag. Like here, you know, it's almost arte povera, but try to purchase something like this and I imagine you would have difficulties because it's probably very expensive. But the idea, I think, is brilliant, you know, with ad hoc arrangements to create a sitting piece that could function to an extent. And I truly end this presentation with this bottle. I began with it and now I end with it. The Hennessy 150. Here it is. He designed the bottle and here he is. What year? It doesn't say, but it must be 1 or 2 years ago. Happy birthday, Frank Gehry. He's probably 91 or 92 in this picture because today and only today he began to be 93. So thank you.